Am I on?
You are on.
Hello, everybody. This is, I don't even know what time it is, probably about 10 o'clock or something, I'm guessing, on a Thursday morning. And you may hear our dogs making noise in the background. That's kind of a familiar thing around here when we're not paying attention to the little ones. It's funny because our big puppies that we have, even though they're not full grown and fully mellow yet, they're less trouble than our little farts. Just doing the background border for my sand painting today, and this is for those that haven't seen any other posts that we've put out, this is a sriyantra, and it's a meditational tool, it's a meditational tool, and it's also a tool for achieving certain energetic goals or reality shifts. It's a generator, I guess you could call it. A generator of energy.
And a focuser.
And a focuser of energy. So it generates and focuses energy. It is also a meditational tool. That's part of how it works, is by activating dimensions within ourselves, and I would myself say by removing resistances, because I think in this case for abundance, the word abundance, to increase abundance, I think it's already there. I think the lack of abundance is because of filters built into us or created within ourselves through events throughout our past. And I think our natural state of being is one of abundance. And I even noticed in myself, when even hearing the word at first, abundance, I felt like that was a very surface, petty thing to be focusing on. And I thought abundance meant, oh, I'm focusing on, like, I want material things, and I had to really recognize that that was my resistance, and my filter, because abundance really is a lovely flow of anything good, and that could include certain material things, but if you go below that surface, there's a lot of depth, and I like to focus on the abundance of the depth, and then the material side can just be a byproduct manifestation of that depth. So abundance of happiness, abundance of joy, abundance of friends, abundance of connections, abundance of, that's the abundance, that's the depth and the deep core. The surface can deal with itself. You don't have to think about the surface. If abundance of money comes with that, well, then it was meant to be. I believe, if one was to focus on the surface and we're looking just for abundance of money, well, let's just say hypothetically you got an abundance of money, but without the real core abundance, well, then you've heard the stories about someone who wins $1 million and becomes bankrupt and a mess, and then, whatever, is depressed, because they didn't know how to deal with it. That's not abundance, in my opinion. That's a surface level, and it's artificial, because if you don't go for the core in anything, abundance or anything else, so if we look at the core, which I think the reason why we don't go for the core is because our society has trained us to work on the surface, to not go for the core. And why is that? So that we are in need of assistance, in need of everything. So we are consumers. They want to pull us away from the core. And that's why I've done a lot of talking about the indigenous mind, and how I believe that, I'm going off track a little bit, but just a quick overview, I believe that the reason why so many Aboriginal people have been attacked and exterminated and abused over time is because of their connection to the earth, their core, and their existence on the core level. And I can go into all kinds of stuff about that. I mean, holy mackerel. But anyways, to get back to what we're talking about, I believe we are being purposely pulled away from our core. Even if we take that out of the equation and we just say it's an accident, it's a byproduct, somehow we are kept away from our core just by the circumstances of today. Let's go for that so there's less argument, and just put our focus on, okay, well, let's go back to our core. Where do we have our core understandings? A good example of that is my tattooing. There's a mass craze of tattooing out there. You'd think that a lot of tattoo artists out there would be working at a depth of what they do, seeing tattooing originally worked at a depth, at a core level, the purpose and meaning, the process of the tattoo, not the finished product. But what happens? We get this mass craze of fad of tattooing that's at a surface and not at a core. And a very few of us, and I intend to bring some of those people to this retreat that I'm speaking of, a few tattoo artists that have always worked at a core level and have never wavered. So yeah, we tend to send an anthropologist off to some island somewhere, which is what's happened in the past. They come back with something, for example, a tattoo process, and go, hey, let's check this out. This is how you do it. A whole bunch of people start doing it, pat themselves on the back because they figured out an electronic way to do it so it goes faster, but they missed the point. They missed the whole depth, the whole core, that a tattoo is not a finished product. It is a process.
It's more than a finished product. I mean,
yeah, it's not just, it's more than, it's a whole process. People who come to me get it because they experience it. That's what we're about with this, is the core of abundance. You work on the core and everything else will fit into place. You don't have to worry about what is this or that. You work on the core and everything else will find its own way. And now going to another level, I think, this is where I'm at the moment. I may change my mind down the road, but where I'm at the moment with the idea of abundance, I think lack of abundance is all to do with our own filters. And that's the same thing as health. The lack of health, I think, has to do with our own filters. I am convinced at this point in my life that our energy medicine, if you want to call it that, all has to do with removing our own resistances. Not finding something out there to change, but finding it all in here. Now that's a very positive thing if I'm right, because that means all we have to do is work on here, which is very doable to change our lives and to improve our lives. And that's what I see happening with people coming here, with the work I do with them, with the tattoo process. Things shift, things open, dreams happen, things change, health comes through. It's phenomenal. I get to witness that. That's my abundance. I get to see this, I see proof, and then I get to pass that inspiration on to you. Not from something that I've just read, but from something that I've actually seen in action over and over and over again. That's why I have such motivation to be doing the things I'm doing. So anyways, back to abundance. This is the sriyantra, and one aspect, or using it as a tool, is to meditate on it when it's finished, to put it so that the central dot, the bindu, is at eye level, sitting up straight, back straight, and meditating on that with eyes open, and then at some point closing your eyes and you'll see the pattern or the symbol in your head. It gets a little more involved than that, but that's the simplified technique. Now, it's also another way of using this as a tool is to actually work on it. In other words, me creating this is my meditation to generating abundance. Someone else who might say, well, there's no way I can do a sand mandala. That's a little bit more sophisticated than I'm ready to take part in. You don't have to do that. You can print out an outline from the internet. There's a ton of them. And you can color it or doodle into it or something. As long as your mind is working on that pattern, that design, you are generating that abundance. Maybe that can be broken down into that you are, I would guess that you're, in this generation of abundance, you are removing obstacles as one large part of that. I think there's all kinds of levels to it. I don't think you really have to know. I'm just going into a little bit of that detail. This has been traced back to being at least 8,000 years old and used for this purpose always. I've researched it a little bit, and variations of this symbol have been used in sand paintings, so it's not new to the whole sand painting art form. And sand painting in itself is a form of generating energy. Some people might want to call that magic. I think magic is something that seems supernatural because we've just been shut off from it for so long, an aspect of ourselves, that we call it magic. It really depends on what you want to call something. I'm sure there would be people who see a car driving down a road and call it magic. It's just if they haven't been exposed to it, it's considered magic. But I consider it truth.
Why don't you talk about your base color, red?
Well, it's interesting that the Chinese use not quite 100% exact same color, but a type of a deep red for quite often painting their house or their door. I'm sure everyone's seen a house done this way, especially in Chinatown.
Restaurants. Our favorite dim sum place has red walls.
Red walls, red
with
doors,
gold
red.
trim.
Yeah, so many cultures find this color for whatever reason they believe or find that it generates that energy. So I think, besides just liking the color as well, because I also, besides just looking up coordinates onto a map or something and following that, I also like to trust my heart, my intuition, and I've been doing that all my life with my art. That's part of what creativity is not following someone else's orders or guidelines. And creating is to make something new, generate something new. And if it's something just followed, well, then it's not new. So I've been doing that all my life. I've always had a tendency to go against the flow.
Well, red is also a symbol. It's not just a color. So there's so many things that red represents. For example, fire is red, so it's fiery, passion, blood, life force. Red is very zesty, ripe color. It invokes many different things, and different things for different people. That's why symbols are so amazing, because they're teachers.
Yeah.
You don't even need to really know somebody else's interpretation of a symbol, although it can help launch you. But look at, what does this color say to me? How does this color or this image or this object speak to me?
Yeah, like you could do an exercise and sit in front of a wall of a color if you had the convenience of having it, that much, or even a swatch, and just observe how you feel.
And if you stare at red long enough, The after color you get is green, which is all about heart chakra. So it's pretty amazing. Red and its complement is green. So you get both the physical and the energetic.
Well, isn't it, I could be wrong, I haven't done my color theory stuff for so long, but the way the eyes work, if you're seeing red, really, it's the complementary color is what's coming through, but you're perceiving it as, I have to reread that. There's some fancy, tricky stuff that goes on in the brain with the eyes and light.
And for people who follow the chakras, or chakras, however you like to pronounce that overlay, red is the root chakra. It is the root. This is where issues of survival or thrival come in, groundedness, health, vitality. So it's a good base color to start with, but you could have it anywhere in your sriyantra mandala. It really is what speaks to you, and follow that.
Yeah, and just to point out, in my just looking through the internet at a trillion different sriyantras done out there, there are sriyantras of every color combination. There are some traditional interpretations, and even those differ. Sometimes they line them up with chakras, sometimes they line them up with elements, fire, earth, air, water, and those color correspondences. There's all different, and I guess there's a different setup of reasons and meanings according to what the mandala is being used for too.
Sure. So Brian Caballero just said he can't stay long. Nice to see you painting. Dealing with norovirus here at home. So Brian, get the kids, print out the Sri Yantra for the kids and get them some pencil crayons or markers or whatever, and let them color. Let them color for their health. So that would be their abundance, is their health coming back to them to fight off that virus. And Brian also says, red is the color of blood. It must flow to bring life. If stagnant, it cannot provide life. Yes, it also transports the bad stuff of if you put it in your body, and it has all the elements. So that's a nice little piece of intel.
That's cool.
So
Thanks,
thank you.
Brian.
And yes, it does. It both carries nutrients, but it also carries the poisons to be eliminated. So blood, yes, blood is absolutely vital. So get the kids coloring, Brian, and you too. If you're home, sit and color with them. This is great. It's a wonderful exercise. It keeps them occupied and keeps them focused on healing from inside out. You know, we need to build our immune systems, and we can do that naturally and fight off all the toxins that we're being bombarded with.
Yeah, and also, you know, we're with all this election stuff, we're in a time where there's just a lot of stresses around. And even children, if they don't know anything about what's happening, they pick up on our stresses. So it's not a surprise that, you know, people are going through a wave of getting sick.
Yeah.
You know, it's just part of the stress factor.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's why I say, united we stand, divided we fall. We also divided we fail on all levels.
Yes.
So we definitely have to be whole within ourselves. That's the first place, not to be divided within ourselves.
Yeah, the division that causes us, I'm not pointing fingers, just that if one, and everyone's had the experience at some point in their life, causes one to point fingers and label another as an enemy. I'll just go to the extreme. Quite often that is the division within projecting and coloring, or creating a lens that distorts. And unless we clear that lens first and then reassess what we think is the enemy or the oppressor or the irritant, we're just punching at ourselves. at our own inner woundings. And quite often throughout history, people have found that those that they were lashing out at in whatever situation were, you know, as good as being their family.
Maybe they were symbolizing their family, and that's why they were projecting.
It's just, you know, everyone's under a lot of stress right now, globally, and it's just so easy to get into that polarized us and them. And the blessing that I've had, the abundance that I've had, is having some clients from the States and getting to know them really well and having a lot of respect for them, and then finding out, in this case, that they were of a different way of perceiving things politically than I was, and thinking, well, how is it that I have such a good connection with them when I didn't know anyone in that category? I thought that they would be this way or that way. And so I made a point of asking them, so how do you perceive the world through this lens, this political lens? And you know, it's not necessarily my way of seeing things, but I totally rocked it. I totally understood how someone under certain pressures and things would feel certain ways. So my blessing, my abundance on one level is to see two polarized forces or groups of people going at each other, hopefully just verbally, and it doesn't escalate. And I'm seeing that both sides are wonderful people. Yes, there's always the bad egg out of either side, but there is no big enemy here. And I'm just appealing to people to consider this idea and get out of that polarized negativity, because that's what the oppressor that's way up puppet mastering wants us to do. They want us to break apart and fight each other, because then we're more controllable, because they don't have to do as much work. Because we are powerful within ourselves and as a group in the world, and we are bigger and stronger than any controller. And that's why they're scared, is because we have a lot if we empower ourselves. So I still believe that in the midst of a lot of stuff, the most important thing to do is to do your inner work. Find your inner abundance and empower yourself, and then look outwards. And especially when someone feels victimized and feels frustrated because they can't do something, remind themselves that they can, because they can work on themselves. Which is what this is all about. This is an invitation to people to do work on themselves with us as a group, not on their lonesome, and make a change.
Brian says, the universe always wants to balance everything out, but sometimes we need to help it along. Yes. When there is oppression, there must be kindness.
Yes.
Yes, kindness and compassion. But that does not mean that we mustn't speak out against crimes that are being committed against humanity or against other life forms. We need to speak out. We need to take a stand. But that doesn't mean, having to go to battle, war cry. Although for some people that's what it does mean, and that's their mission, and that is their purpose. So I'm grateful that they are there, but at the same time I know that the answer in my heart truly is unity. And this is where we need to move towards, is unity. Finding those places of common shared values and standing together as unified beings. Because if unity were not important, they, meaning the powers that were, because I will not call them the powers that be, the powers that were would not be spending so much money and so much energy and time to play the controlled opposition card. which is what they've been doing.
Yep.
Since, certainly within recent memory, since September 11th. And they will do whatever false flags, whatever media manipulation to manipulate the masses, that's what they will do. So to me, that is the root cause that we need to stand.
And the proof that it is what it is. And you know, people under pressure, you've seen a pack of dogs, when they're on their own, they're one way, and then when they're in a pack, they become savage and they even eat at each other. And that's what's happening. Is the stresses and a little bit of manipulation is tipping us in the direction of biting at each other.
Yeah, and then they can bring in more of their police state. Speaking of mobbing dogs. Instead of just scratching behind the ears and they're not mobbing anymore. All right, let's park this for now. We'll check in a little bit later. Bye for now.